Long, Robb, and Fisher, so these are the two guys who were at the house faced with these aggressors, and Fisher is the angry woman here, testified regarding the events leading up to the shooting. Long and Robb recounted substantially the same facts. Fisher, the angry woman who called this posse to these gentlemen's home, however, testified that it was Long. Long had physically assaulted her at the bar earlier that night. Any evidence to support that, you think, other than her self-serving testimony? I expect not. So Fisher, the woman, the angry woman, testified Long had physically assaulted her at the bar earlier that night. By the way, even if Long had physically assaulted Fisher, even if he had hit her with a bottle at the bar earlier that night, is that a legal justification for Poole to show up at his home with a posse of armed men and shoot him with an AR? No, of course not. That is vigilante justice. She's supposed to call the police and let the police make an arrest if they think it's appropriate. Why didn't she do that? I suspect she didn't do that because she had no evidence of an assault, and the police would not have been sympathetic to an evidence-free claim of assault. But her baby daddy, the guy who gets some action, sure, why not, right? He's going to be the hero for her, the white knight. Fisher, the angry woman, further testified that Long pointed the shotgun at Poole before Poole took a rifle from another man and shot Long. Poole did not testify in his own defense. Of course, he doesn't have to. Poole's theory of defense was that he shot Long in self-defense. However, in his closing argument, Poole also challenged his identification as the shooter. Now, this is a problem for the defense, right? You're allowed to do this. You're allowed to offer, I mean, if the judge allows it, but they often do. You're allowed to offer inconsistent defense theories, alternative, inconsistent defense theories. So you can claim, hey, I shot him, but it was lawful self-defense. But if you don't believe that one, it wasn't me. Someone else did it. It's misidentification. Technically, you're allowed to do that. How do you think that sells to a jury? You think that might mutually undermine both defenses? Yes, of course. If you're claiming self-defense because you shot somebody, there are good reasons for shooting another person, even for killing them. And the jury's going to want to hear a good reason. But if you're giving them alternative, inconsistent reasons, it just looks like a fabrication. It looks like what you're actually doing. You're throwing up a bunch of legal defenses against the wall to see what sticks. That does not look meritorious to a jury. Poole moved for a judgment of acquittal at the close of the state's evidence, and again at the close of all evidence. So why might you move for a judgment of acquittal? Well, at the close of the state's evidence, so remember, of course, there's opening statements, and then the state presents its case in chief first, its witnesses, its narrative to the jury, and then it rests, and then it's a turn for the defense to present its case in chief, its witnesses, its theory of the case to the jury. And it's theoretically possible that when the state presents its theory of the case to the jury, that, for example, they might have failed to introduce evidence as to a required element of a criminal charge. They just slipped up. They forgot. They forgot that element of the criminal charge existed. And they actually introduced no evidence in support of that element. Certainly not enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Typically, it would require, they literally just forgot about it. No evidence on that element. Well, if there's no evidence on that element, there's no way a rational jury could find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt because one of the elements has no evidence to support it. In that case, it would be appropriate for a judge to issue a judgment of acquittal on that criminal charge because from a strictly technical legal perspective, it can't be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt when one of the required elements is supported by zero evidence. But that doesn't really happen in the real world, folks. The prosecution doesn't forget to do that. Typically, they present some evidence and the defense is arguing, well, it's so little evidence that no rational jury could conclude that was enough. But the judge is always going to defer to the jury as the finders of fact on that question. As long as there's more than zero evidence, 1% evidence, it's up to the jury to decide if that 1% is sufficiently compelling to prove that element beyond a reasonable doubt. So you always, as the defense, you always file this motion for acquittal when the state rests, and it's always denied. And then when the whole trial is over, when the defense has rested as well, you again file the motion for acquittal. No rational jury could find guilt here, and it's always denied. I mean, if you didn't do that, it would probably be malpractice, but you don't really do it as the defense counsel. You don't really do it with the expectation that will be granted. You do it so you have an issue for appeal, right? Like it's an issue for appeal here. It's one of the 3 grounds for appeal. So Poole moved for a judgment of acquittal at the close of the state's evidence and again at the close of all evidence, meaning after the defense had also rested. The trial court denied both motions, as they always do. Poole then objected to the state's self-defense instruction because the instruction contained initial aggressor language. So this initial aggressor language, the standard self-defense instruction does cover, so what we're really speaking to here is the element of innocence in the claim of self-defense. Let's see if I can find it. There we go, innocence. By the way, if you don't have this 5 elements of self-defense law cheat sheet, you can get it for free. We make it available for free. It's just a PDF download at lawofselfdefense.com/elements. These 5 elements are the building blocks for any claim of self-defense. If you don't know how these work, you can't possibly understand self-defense law. There's only 5. There's not 500. There's not 50. There's only 5. It's not rocket science. But if you don't know them, you're too ignorant, not in a derogatory sense, but in a technical sense. You don't have the foundation to understand self-defense law. So I would urge you, if you do nothing else, get this 100% free 5 elements of self-defense law cheat sheet at lawofselfdefense.com/elements. And the element of innocence essentially says that, the law of self-defense is intended to allow people to defend themselves against unlawful aggression. It's not intended to allow someone to be the unlawful aggressor. And that's covered in the standard self-defense jury instruction. But there's an additional bonus part of the self-defense jury instruction that's not always included, but can be included if the state requests it. And it really focuses on this question of the initial aggressor. So it doubles down on the question of the initial aggressor. Who started the fight? And it really focuses the jury's attention on that question, which of course is what the state wants and what the defense does not want. So I know the court addresses it specifically here.